Good evening, Draftaholics, and welcome to Draft Punks. I'm Sam.
And I'm Adrian, and this is your pre-release and draft guide for Wilds of Eldraine.
Once upon a time, there were two children, Hansel and Greta, who journeyed into a dark forest, laying behind them an edible candy trail, that then decided to wake up, sentient and carnivorous. They escaped being devoured by a sentient pastry and made it to the safety of a gingerbread cabin. There, they met the kindly Agatha, who unfortunately for them turned out to be an evil witch who baked Hansel into a pie, and then fed him to Greta?
Dude, what the hell? This set is messed up.
Yeah, no kidding. Welcome to Wilds of Eldraine.
Are you looking to spice up your magic life? Maybe you should try some roleplay.
Rolls are colorless enchantment aura tokens that are created by all colors and card types in Wilds of Eldraine. A player can only control one role per creature, so if a new role is put on the creature, any old ones are destroyed. The roles are represented as flip tokens in boosters for your local drafts or pre-release, but you can use anything to represent them.
There are 6 different roles, each focused in a different color pair. The first 4 all give the creature +1/+1 and one other ability. They are Monster, which also grants Trample, Royal, which also grants Ward 1, Sorcerer, which also lets you scry 1 when the creature attacks, and Wicked, which dings your opponent for 1 when the creature dies.
The monster role is mostly created by red-green aggressive cards, such as Monstrous Rage. Royal is created primarily by green and white cards, such as Royal Treatment. Sorcerer finds its home in blue-red spells decks, with cards such as Splashy Spellslinger. And Wicked belongs in black-red decks that punish your opponent for killing your creature, or allowing you to get your sacrifice engines online, such as with Twisted Fealty.
The final 2 roles work a little differently. Young Hero doesn't grant a permanent buff, but gives the enchanted creature, when this creature attacks, if its toughness is 3 or less, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And finally, the Cursed role turns the enchanted creature into a base 1/1, and is the only role designed to be put on your opponent's creatures. Although, if you ever put it on your own for the win, please send us a screenshot.
Young Hero is found in red-white beatdown strategies with, surprise surprise, a bunch of small creatures, including the powerful Embereth Veteran. Meanwhile, the Cursed role is mostly created by annoying blue cards, such as Vantress Transmuter.
With all these enchantment tokens being created, we have the perfect environment for an Enchantments Mana theme. We can see this theme primarily in green and white, with robustly remarkable roustabouts like Rhymefur Reindeer and Redtooth Redguard, which get better the more enchantments you can have hit the board.
Now, unlike previous sets, the prevalence of rolls means that enchantments are going to be hitting the graveyard more often than usual. Black and White could not be happier about this, with Warehouse Tabby and Knight of Doves ready to flood the board with more creatures to take on new rolls.
Now, it's not an Eldraine set without food tokens, and Wilds does not disappoint, with a whopping 19 cards below rare creating or interacting with food. The mechanic is primarily in black-green with plenty of efficient enablers such as Sweet Tooth Witch, Tough Cookie, and Return from the Wilds.
And it gets better, since there are multiple food build-arounds, almost all of which bring a food along with them to get the value engine started. Knight of the Sweet's Revenge is a sweet build-around, Experimental Confectioner turns your food into rats, and even at common, Hollow Scavenger helps translate your confectionery into damage.
The new bargain mechanic appears in every color to help you take advantage of all those rolls, food, and creature tokens that you'll have lying around in Wilds of Eldraine. Bargain is a bit like Kicker, an optional additional cost that lets you sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or token for an additional effect on your spells or permanents.
For example, Candy Grapple is a 2-mana -3/-3, or you can bargain it up to a -5/-5. Hamlet Glutton looks like a 7-mana Honey Mammoth, but is secretly only 5 mana. And Johann's Stopgap is soon to be our most drafted card of the set.
The other side effect of rolls and food is that you'll have lots of permanents entering the battlefield. Why not celebrate with some, well, celebration?
It's a celebration.
A new mechanic on permanents that gives a bonus effect when 2 or more permanents have entered the battlefield this turn.
This mechanic is centered in red-white and so leans fairly aggressive, with creatures like Grand Ball Guest and Gallant Pie Wielder, for when pie to the face beats both sword and mace.
And we can't forget about adventures, almost certainly the coolest mechanic to come out of original Eldraine. For those unfamiliar, take a look at Aquatic Alchemist. You can cast the Alchemist just like any other creature, or you can first cast its adventure, which will always be an instant or sorcery, but then still cast the creature side afterwards. Now, don't be fooled if these look overcosted, these cards are always great value.
Yeah, that's right. Adventures were super powerful in original Eldraine Limited, and Wild seems no different. Although Wizards did at least learn that Lucky Clover and Edgewall Innkeeper were supposed to be at 4 mana. But in every colour and at every rarity, there are powerful natural 2-for-1s, all with built-in flexibility.
Unlike our last visit to Eldraine, Wilds has some Adventures Matter cards. So if the phrase enough value simply doesn't make sense to you, make sure you pick up some Howling Gale Fangs and Frantic Firebolts.
Wilds of Eldraine also has a bonus sheet titled The Enchanting Tales, featuring powerful enchantments from throughout Magic's history. This works similarly to the retro artifacts from Brothers War and the multiverse legends from March of the Machine, with a dedicated slot in draft boosters, so you can find them in your packs at both drafts and at your pre-release.
So if you ever wanted to play with, Rhystic Study, Doubling Season, Bitter Blossom, or Necropotence in a regular limited format, now is your chance.
Each limited archetype is defined by a legendary creature based on a famous fairy tale character, each with a unique magic identity.
Blue and white are the colors of the Snow Queen, also known as Shirei of Numbing Depths, whose archetype is all about tapping down your opponent's creatures. You'll find payoffs for the archetype mostly at uncommon, with Shirei herself, Solitary Sanctuary, or Ice-Wrought Sentry.
Once you have the payoffs, then suddenly otherwise decent cards like Freeze in Place, Plunge into Winter, and Succumb to the Cold start to look red hot. Cold.
Blue-black is the home of Sleeping Beauty, known here as Obira Dreaming Duelist, and her Legion of Fairies. There are some powerful and efficient payoffs for having just one fairy on the battlefield, such as Fairy Fencing and Ego Drain.
Most of these payoffs do not need a critical mass of fairies, like a traditional go-wide tribal deck. So that means if your pre-release pool has even just 5 or 6 fairies, like say Barrow Naughty, Snaremaster Sprite, or Mocking Sprite, you might just run all of them as a nice little package.
Black and red are the colors of the Pied Piper, known in Eldraine as Tottentan's Swarm Piper, and his swarm of rat tokens. The rat tokens in this set are 1/1s that can't block, which means we get them at a pretty efficient rate on cards like Warehouse Tabby or Voracious Vermin.
To the followers of the Piper, though, being unable to block is but a trifle. These rats are going to be sacrifice fodder to, say, Candy Grapple or Torch the Tower. But if that doesn't work, we'll just swarm the opponent to death by spewing out rats to pair with Gnawing Crescendo or Tattered Ratter.
Red-green is the home of Little Red Riding Hood, who you'll soon get to know as Ruby, Daring Tracker, who headlines the ferocious 4-Power Matters theme. This theme won't play a major role in most decks, as it is only seen in 3 uncommons: Ruby herself, Territorial Witch Stalker, and Boundarylands Ranger.
But if you do have the payoffs for it, Wilds of Eldraine is actually a pretty good home for the 4-Power theme. The problem is always that it requires too many expensive cards, but Eldraine has the perfect solution. Adventures. Ferocious Werefox, Grabby Giant, and Two-Headed Hunter all give you a way to use your expensive cards in the early game while still having access to the beef in the late game.
Green and white are where you will find Sir Arment, the Knight Beauty of Beauty and the Beast fame. Sir Arment loves her beast, and therefore wants you to make as many of those monster rolls as possible. Or any roll, really. Sir Arment is not that picky.
There are a lot of enchantment payoffs in this colour pair, all with slightly different flavours. Slumbering Keepguard wants enchantments to hit the board, Knight of the Doves wants them to die, and Dutiful Griffin wants to eat them? I'm not a griffin, so I'm not quite sure what the flavour is there.
White and black are the natural home for Snow White and the very flavorful Bargain Sacrifice theme. Headlined by Snow White herself, Neva, stalked by nightmares, this archetype pays you off for your enchantments hitting the bin. The natural enablers are rolls, but there's some great gems like Hopeless Nightmare and Hopeful Vigil that enable this mechanic perfectly.
So once you've got your disposable enchantments and your bargain spells, if that's not enough value for you already, Ashiok's Reaper will help keep those cards flowing, Savior of the Sleeping will pressure the opponent, and Wicked Visitor will slowly drain them to death.
Feeling hungry? Welcome to Black Green Food, the home of Greta, Sweet Tooth Scourge, here to avenge the death of Hansel at the sticky hands of those sugary villains. Greta has her work cut out for her, though. If we tried to list all of the cards in this set that create food tokens, you'll be at the pre-release by the time we finish.
But that's good news for the Black-Green Drafter. As we mentioned at the top, Knight of the Sweets Revenge, Experimental Confectioner, and Provisions Merchant all give us some great build-arounds to grab early in a draft and put together in a sweet value pile.
If you want to climb the beanstalk, you best be ready for some giants. Thankfully, Troyan Gutsy Explorer, the hero of blue-green, is all about the big boys. There are a number of payoffs for casting 5 drops or greater in blue-green, including Stormkeld Prowler, Skybeast Tracker, and the very powerful Up the Beanstalk.
Are we allowed to make jokes about that card's name?
No. No, you cannot.
Okay. Well, what's no joke is that this theme is easier to enable than you might think, again thanks to adventures. Just like the red-green ferocious theme, adventure creatures like Ballooner's Gatekeeper and Stormkeld Vanguard go a long way to make this archetype tick.
Johan is the Sorcerer's Apprentice and the champion of the blue-red Instants and Sorceries theme, but with a twist. This archetype also cares about cards with adventures, so just in case you weren't happy with all of your cards being 2-for-1s anyway, grab some Frantic Firebolts and Hearth Elementals for some more incentive to draft adventures.
And Holy Bone Crusher are the adventures in this color pair powerful, particularly at Uncommon. Check out Frolicking Familiar, Picklock Prankster, and Two-Headed Hunter.
Ash Party Crasher is the Cinderella of this particular party, and she's here to kick the celebration off with a bang. Red-White wants you to put 2 non-land permanents on the board each turn, and if you can, you'll be paid off with your 2-drop Armory Mice and Grand Ball Guests getting buffed and your belligerent ball guests just busting balls all over the joint.
Now, if you're thinking that having 2 non-land permanents hit the board every turn is a bit of a tough ask, you're just not thinking like Oko. We've got rolls from Charmed Clothier, food from Food Coma, and rat tokens from Edgewall Pack, along with many others to keep the board presence flowing.
Now, before we go, you should know a bit about the fixing in Wilds of Eldraine. There is a 10-card cycle of uncommon creatures with off-colored adventures on them, and a few rares doing the same. Some of these are worth playing just for one side, like say Spellscorn Coven, which you might want to run in your black-white deck. So what if you want to play the blue adventure side some of the time?
Well, this time we don't have a cycle of dual lands, so we need to be a little bit more selective with our fixing. Everybody's favourite Evolving Wilds is back, as is nobody's favourite Crystal Grotto. We've also got some decent artifact fixing in Prophetic Prism and Scarecrow Guide, which might also fit with some of the bargain strategies. At Uncommon, there's also the new Edgewall Inn.
Things get a bit better if you are green though, with access to some stronger fixing in Brave the Wilds, Root Rider Fawn, and Return from the Wilds. So, will green-based multicolor adventures be an archetype of its own in Wilds of Eldraine? Time will tell. But it certainly seems that without green, you have to make more deck-building sacrifices if you want to splash around.
So, whether you are a Sleeping Beauty Fairy Queen, a Pied Piper Swarmlord, or a vengeful food foe, there are some intricate, powerful, and exciting archetypes in Wilds of Eldraine Draft and pre-release for you and your elk.
Here at the Draft Punks, we do weekly draft videos together and have a wacky time with our crazy little community. Our first video with the new set will be out the day the set is available in Arena, so if you would like to join us, we would love you to do just one thing. You need to remember what to call a werewolf on YouTube.
It's a like and subscribe.